Let's see, where do I begin? What is two-spirit? Okay, two-spirit's actually just like a umbrella term that the native LGBTQ community came up with. Plus, back in about 1989, they were on Ojibwe territory up in Canada, and what the word they had been using, the anthropological word was berdache, Berdached. It was like a Persian mistranslated French word or something. But anyways, it came through two variations and it ended up being berdache, and that's what the French had first started calling when they came over. French traders, berdache. Oh, they must be berdache. But turns out it was a really offensive term. It meant like kept uh, slave boy or something. It was like a sex slave type word. And of course, it was really misrepresentative of the roles in society of various tribes of, well, two-spirit people. But since they were on Ojibwe territory, they used the word Miz or Ms. Donowig. I could spell it better than that's the curse of being a writer. I could spell the word better than I could say it. Ms. Donowig. Anyways, if you Wikipedia it, I'm not gonna Ms. Donowig, it meant two spirit in the Ojibwe language. And I think it's a fairly accurate term. It's like incorporates both female and male bodies. Which are even my tribe is like a Hemane. It's like my body might have been born male, but my heart and soul is that of female. And a lot of tribes have their own similar words, like Winkte for Lakota, and another one is the Navajo as Nadlehe. But yeah, so they replaced it with the whatever berdache word with two spirit, and it just like eventually cut on. So because but if you ever want to look at like anthropological studies and stuff, you have to kind of look up berdache, because a lot of the stuff that was written where they was like in the 70s and 80s. That's when yeah, they really started like digging into it. I'm glad they did, because a lot of these stories would have been forgotten if it wasn't for some dedicated scholars who like really made it. One of them was a Polygon Allen. But yeah, I'll get back to her. Anyways, so where do we begin? How do we get to almost being erased, really? I guess we'll start back to not 1491 or 1492, but actually about 1478 is when they and even a little bit before that, which they really did this decree the Catholic Church uh, against sodomy. It became kind of a, with all the witch burnings and all that, it was like kind of right next to it. They're burning witches and then sodomites and stuff. I could go into the history and theories of why that might have been. It kind of does a lot with the conquest by the Moors and stuff. I mean, they were more sexually free and stuff, but they kind of had an inferiority complex and stuff. The Catholics that were conquered, but well, at least we are not sodomites like them. That's like one of the theories. But anyways, once they got to the Americas, the conquistadors and stuff, it was like, yeah, I mean, I'll put it this way: in 1510 or 1478, around 1510, and then 1524, and then like 1535. Don't quote me on those dates, but all roughly in that, they're always doing decrees against sodomy, like every few years, just to like keep it fresh or something. It was like the moral values of topic of the time or something. Anyways, so every little while they're doing that. I mean, everyone says that Doctrine of Discovery is the reason why they took the natives' lands. Doctrine of Discovery, which is true, but even at the time, amongst the more liberal scholars and Spanish, or just as Catholic priests and stuff, they were like, no, we can't just. These are advanced civilizations. We can't just say, oh, Doctrine of Discovery and take their lands. I mean, they're not. These are people with like temples and stuff. They're actual people. So so they kind of came up with another way of well, just to like, well, it's justified that we take their land, not by doctrine of discovery per se, because it was kind of a mix. But if they practice cannibalism or incest or sodomy, so yeah, and so there wasn't too much cannibalism. I mean, there's rare instances on, little islands that they're kind of exaggerated. And then of course, incest was very rare. I mean, this applied over in Europe too, but of course, I mean, these rules applied to Europe to like take people's lands over there too. But the sodomy was something they really used. In all the notes and stuff, they said, "Oh, we saw effeminates all over." Because they'd show up to these temples and stuff, and there'd be like these trans two-spirit like priestesses and stuff, like holding up, like in high positions and stuff, and they'd have like statues and everything made of them, and they were just appalled by this. So that's kind of the reasons they were just like that was one of the main reasons why they just like kind of went through and just well, there's this famous Francisco de Balboa was his name. I always remember that name because my name's Adrian and Rocky Balboa. But anyway. But anyways, yeah, Francisco de Balboa. It was like a 1508, and that's pretty early in the conquistadors. He was considered one of the more progressive conquistadors, if you could say that. But he tried to make like friends with them and figure out the natives and stuff, and just be an ally to them somewhat. Except a lot of them were had effeminates, as they said, the trans people. And there was an instance, there's like a famous instance, they have a drawing and everything of it, where he fed 40 sodomites to dogs, like made a big pit and just gathered all these trans people, these effeminates or whatever, and threw them in and had them torn apart by these war dogs. And war dogs are these big giant mastiffs that they basically train to eat human flesh, and they basically were such tough dogs that they helped drive out the Moors and everything. Anyways, yeah, it was pretty vicious. And then you could see the letters and stuff they wrote about it. It would just be like, and then like one of the priests with them was just like, and that was a fine and honorable action by a true Catholic Spaniard and stuff. And they were just like proud of like, wiping this plague of sodomy off these new lands. And, they always called them demonic and everything. Anyways, so that was the pattern all the way up for the conquistadors. I mean, beyond like, already being devastated by a disease, but that was one of the primary reasons. And we go fast forward up to, let's say about 1780 in California, well, present day California. And that's where the Spanish priests were up there and stuff. So there was this local Spanish priest, head of the area, whatever, and he caught someone, having sex with a two-spirit person, and they were just appalled by this. And he goes, but they were even more appalled. And he goes, who is this person? And he goes, well, that's one of my wives. And they were just like shocked and everything. So they made it a mission to just like, and they were pretty heavily populated with two-spirit people, and they're really mellow people in the California tribes and stuff, just to like eradicate them and wipe them out to the point where, even if you were trans or two-spirit, you weren't gonna like say it. So so that became their mission, to wipe it out all along the coast and in that area. So by about 1820s, I believe, yeah, they reported great success of no more effeminates within the area. And that pretty much almost became, even like amongst the natives and stuff, they couldn't really report it, but it just kind of was beaten out of them, really. So now we'll not fast forward really too far, but go over to the plains. George Catlin, the artist. Remember, he's famous for drawing these big, fancy, colorful pictures of chiefs and everything about the 1830s or 1840s. But he created this one. It was called Dance of the Bradash. And it was like see him being a Christian or being an artist, he was fascinated by this thing where they were like honoring this two-spirit person. And they have the Bradash person in the middle. It was like the Sacs and Fox tribe over in the Midwest area. Probably around, I want to say like Missouri area. But anyways, yeah. And they were honoring this person. There's like 20 men like all dancing around this two-spirit person. It was like an annual thing. So being an artist, he was fascinated by that enough to draw it anyway. But being a Christian and everything, ironically, he like writes, and this is something that we must, this, oh, I was disgusted by this ritual, this barbaric, whatever. But this is something we must, of course, don't quote me on this, but that was just as this is something we must eradicate from the history of, uh, history books, whatever. This isn't something. So that's why I say it's ironic, because it becomes one of the definitive proofs of, yeah, these people did exist, even though he's saying, don't, we need to eradicate this from history. It's like, so, and then now we get to our area, I guess, the Northern Plains. This said that, I want to always tell this one story. Crazy Horse himself, there's an elder who said he probably had like one or two-spirit Winkte wives. It wouldn't be like literal marriage and stuff, but like these big war parties and stuff, they would take along these two-spirit people, the Winktes or Hemanes, because within the tribes we were like I guess that's something else I should explain. Our usefulness is we were considered very very intelligent, able to see things from all points of view, um, artistic, and we were also like the medical doctors a lot of times, and yeah, just the counselors, everything. I mean, we were medicine people, but like literal medicine people too. Like if you took us along on a war party, whatever, yeah, if you busted a bone, there would be the person that would know what to do. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of positive traits that you just had. You were expected to be like a hard worker, artistic. It was, yeah, and speak like harsh, blunt truths and everything. Even have prophetic abilities. So that's how we get to the we're gonna call it Battle of the Hundred Slain, but history book calls it Fetterman's Massacre. So right before that, there was like this Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Lakota tribe just gathered up, and they were like, well, the Cheyenne tribe was pretty hesitant to join. It's like, well, what's going to happen if we go down there? No, we don't want to risk losing a whole bunch of people just to, maybe kill 5 of them. So, but they had this Winkte person. He goes and, comes back blindfolded. It's kind of a crazy ritual, and comes back and says, I have 5 people in my hand that you could kill if you went now. They're like, no, we're not going to risk that. And he does it again, goes back. I have 10 people. And the Cheyennes were still hesitant. Like, nah, I don't know if it's worth it. And then they did it a third time. Their horse is all like zigzagging. And he hops off the horse, slaps the ground 10 times. It says, if you go right now, there's 100 killed right now. And they respected the wink tape two-spirit person so much, like, yeah, let's do this. Let's go Skodan. And then right after that, yeah, we all know the Fetterman massacre happened, but that's a lot of things people might call it critical race theory to say so, but right after that, it was like a decisive defeat for the U.S. Army. They had to pull completely out of that area, just, and had all their forts burned down and signed a treaty. So even stuff like today and stuff like over in Standing Rock and stuff, the treaty rights they're protesting for, that stems from that treaty. So it came from a position of strength and everything that those treaties were made. And of course, it was broken a few years ago when they found gold in the Black Hills. But yeah, those treaties were never, you know, overridden. So after like natives were like kind of rounded up, you know, after the buffalo were killed and everything, they had nowhere to go, and they just went to the reservations. It was said the Lakota and the Cheyenne were. It's like Joe Medicine Crow. He's the one. He said, yeah, they're kind of treated like POWs, but our Crow tribe. So you notice like a Crow tribe where they were allied kind with the whites, and they were just kind of left alone for the most part. And it kind of benefited their culture and everything. So because even up with their language and everything, because even up to like the 1890s, they had this. This is like a very important story, I guess. I always, if there's one thing I want people to remember from this, is like in the 1890s, yeah, there was this Crow two-spirit person. His name is Finds Them and Kills Them, or Osh Tish, but he got the name Finds Them and Kills Them from the Belle of the Rosebud. Anyway, details about that. But in a very militaristic culture, the Crow tribe, if your name Finds Them and Kills Them, you're a badass. You're respected. So they were just kind of you know, don't mess with Finds Them and Kills Them. I mean, everyone, you know, respected them, and there was like a group of two-spirit people in the Crow tribe, and you know, but this Indian agent, he comes over, you know, and he's like, well, what's that supposed to be, a man? Well, you know, and it just baffled them. They're like, yeah, that's the way they're born, whatever. And he did not like it. So he gathered all the two-spirit or trans people, threw them in jail, chopped their hair off, made them wear man's clothes, and had them out there digging, like doing manual man's labor, which is kind of, there's like, get them dig these trees that are in this big park at Pro Agency that exists today. So that's like living history. I always think of that every time. Anyways, when he had him doing this, the Crow tribe, they were just appalled, like, what the F, you know? It was like the Chief Pretty Eagle came all the way across the reservation just to say, you get this Indian agent out of here. You did not treat these people like that. Just, you don't, they just didn't get it, you know? That, okay, their belief came from, I always say, from the sands of the Middle East, all the way across, you know, Asia, Europe, all the way across an ocean, and then all the way across North America continent, smack dab in the middle of rural Montana. It's like these beliefs might as well came from Mars as far as these natives. I mean, this is something they'd known for thousands of years. They never questioned it. It just didn't click in their head that, oh, finds them and kills them. There's something wrong with them. There's something wrong with them. It was just like, oh no, that's just the way they're born. And they just went with it, you know, and that was cool. They just live and let live, you know. They respected independency, how people were born and stuff. And that's, you know, and it just didn't get in their own heads how that, you know, that belief way over there said these people were wrong. You know, it just didn't click. So they actually had the Indian agent kicked out of there, which is kind of really unheard of, especially for those times. But, you know, of course, some colonization really takes over. All the kids are eventually sent to boarding school. Not all of them, but, you know, there's churches all over teaching them. The shun finds them and kills them. You got to shun them, you know, don't be like them, and teaching from very young. But Joe Medicine Crow actually met Finds Them, Kills Them later in the 19, when they were a very young person. But yeah, but it figured Joe Medicine Crow died at 102 just a couple of years ago. So, so, so yeah, so we had this children sent to boarding schools and everything. And I want to tell this one story. There's this instance of a Nodlehay child. The Navajo. Oh, the interesting thing about them is like, I remember reading this one part. It always stuck in my head. It was like, they were practical deities. That's how respected they were within tribes. I mean, they were chiefs, but they're almost on another level. We respect them. They're always the richest people in the tribe. And how do you become rich? It's like, well, they a lot of people owe them favors for whatever reasons. Anyways, they were always the wealthiest people in tribes, and but anyways, so these Navajo, they send their Nodlehe child, probably like 8 or 10 or something. It's like, oh, our child's a Nodlehe, we're blessed, and they didn't know that they were going to the infamous Carlisle Indian School, so they just send them off dressed as they normally would. But and there was a cousin telling the story, and she's just like, yeah, you know, we all protected the child because we kind of had a feeling what would happen. They're dressed as a girl kid, but there was this, and I always like to imagine that was like their little, they're being taught their culture is bad, this and that, and they can't even speak their own languages, but in their midst, there's this little trans two-spirit child, it's their little act of defiance to protect this kid. So when they finally had this lice outbreak, when they had to scrub down each kid, they found out that the child was biologically male, and just freaked out on the child in front of everyone. And the woman, the cousin, when she was an old woman telling the story, but she just like, is it like, to this day, she still like gets mad and angry. Like, they just took my cousin and I never saw him or her again. And, and she just like, you know, was gonna cry thinking about it. It just scared the, sin out. This is what happens. This is sin. And, as no, there's like unmarked boarding school graves at Carlisle and a lot of boarding school places. So that's where they presume the kid just ended up there. So when we hearing a lot about boarding school kids, and that would be one of the reasons why is they would just, yeah. So it's just awful to think what happened to that kid. So fast forward a little bit farther, it ironically became the Crow tribe. I think her name was Nellie Pretty Eagle Stewart. And it's always weird saying these names since I know people literally with these last names and stuff. But she was a respected medicine woman. She just kind of like combined Christianity. She prayed with a preacher once, and it's like, oh, that's cool. And someone had a miraculous healing. So she just kind of combined the Crow traditional ways and Christian ways, as in, the Jesus ways, as a, it's like to be empathetic to their point of view. It's like, well, why would they adopt that? Because they saw religion all around them, Catholic churches, not this kind of churches, but the Pentecostalism was like appealing because it was more of a spiritual thing. Oh, Jesus prayed for 40 days and fasted. Oh, we fast too, And it wasn't like the set dogma of religion. It was just stuff like that they were really drawn to. And plus there was like nowhere to go on the Crow Indian reservation, because by then they had this really strict Indian agent. He wouldn't let them go anywhere. It would be like, no one can go anywhere, but he can deny them church. So they just started having these big revival gatherings. And even if you didn't like Christianity or whatever, it was like literally the only place to go. So these Christian revivals start getting bigger and bigger on the Crow reservation. And there's this one guy, he just showed up and he was like, it's like really impressed by the Crow tribe's passion for Christianity. She's like, oh, we can get these people to professionally trained as missionaries and preachers and stuff. So we sent them to Life Bible College in California, and just weird because I still know people that literally go there today. But anyways, they come back, and there's 4 of them that went, but one in particular, he became like the Billy Graham of Indian country, I guess, in the 50s and 60s. His name was Harold Carpenter, and I actually know his son. But anyways, he became like this very charismatic, very powerful speaker all across the plains and down to the Southwest and wherever. But his thing was, you can't, we have to separate. You can't have native religions or native spirituality combined with Christianity. It's one or the other. So he really set a hard line and drew that point. So yeah, that was something that a lot of the, I want to say, boomer generation of natives grew up in, was that where it really, so we talk about boarding schools and everything, and combined with that belief on the northern plains and stuff, it was like that really separated, like, so of course by the 80s and stuff, things like two-spirit people, or bada is the word for crow. It's like people like literally just thought that, just use it as a slur. You just called, oh, you're winkte. It was just like an insult of, what the English word is, starts with F-A, that word, that's how natives were using it. So it went to really respected, person within the community to a slur. That's how much it kind of got drilled out of them. You see that process of how they were, and I kind of grew up in that. My mom just kind of embraced Christianity too. She was supposed to be a medicine woman or something, since my grandpa was a Native American um, medicine person. He's like the leader of the Native American church, which also Cheyenne, and it was like he do peyote and stuff like that, which was like illegal up until like the 70s. So he was doing all this, yeah, just to practice his own religion was illegal up until, was it 79 or 77? Anyways, so yeah, so I grew up very I'll tell you a story about, it's like I laugh at it now, but I went to this church camp, and I was like, I just remember crying, like praying really hard that when I was a sinner and I was an abomination. And it was like just ugly cry facing on this prayer bench at this, church camp that I, thought I was a female. It was like gender dysphoria, we'd call it now, but I just didn't know what was wrong with me. But you know, so but I just grew up in like this rough and tumble home with a whole bunch of, you know, brothers and everything. But that's just some story I had. But figure back in the day, I wouldn't have had that dysphoria. It would have just been like, oh yeah, you're Hamane, you're, accepted. And that's literally like kind of came across it, and it kind of saved me in a sense. It was like that movie Little Big Man. There's this one character, uh, Little Horse. Everyone remembers him. He's kind of this comedic character. I mean, I didn't like it. It was like, no, I don't want to be that. Because he's like, oh, you look tired, little big man. You want to come to my teepee and rest on soft furs? Which is funny, but it was like, I did not want to be that. So I just kind of strayed from it. But at the same time, it was like so enlightening to me to know that there was a word. We did exist. So I always kind of kept that in my head. Nowadays I can go back and watch Little Big Man. Said, well, even in that movie, they kind of said, well, they were very respected amongst the people, and they were going to sing in a ceremony later, stuff like that. I mean, going back, as like we did lead the Hamane Two-Spirit Cheyenne tribe, we led like ceremonies and stuff. We were like literally in the middle. And if you wanted to hook up with a girl or whatever, or vice versa, you had to go through us. So we're very popular. Anyways, so yeah. Um, I'm trying to not repeat myself. So. And anyways, yeah, I mean, just without sliding into my own. So basically, yeah, by about the 80s, it all becomes a slur and everything. But now there's a rejuvenation of, someone asked me at MSU Billings, is like, well, how's the Native Two-Spirit community? Is it more accepting? And I was like, it's kind of difficult to say. I mean, the younger generation always is, but a lot of times, like me just coming out, being Hamane, Two-Spirit, and I guess that's kind of almost a difference between, I mean, a lot of natives, they will claim like, oh yeah, Two-Spirit, I'm a Hamane, because that word specifically means something, which means like a great responsibility within your tribe and stuff. You got to be a leader, basically. You're, I don't know. when I said I was Hamani, I knew I had to like come out of my, what do you call it? I was very introverted, very in the back, behind the scenes person. But when I came out as a two-spirit trans Hamani, it's like I knew I had to like be talking to you people right now. um, stuff like that. And yeah, I guess if I just told my own personal story, whatever. But I've been out for about, let's just say right when I got sober, which I celebrated 4 years sobriety, like just the other week. That's when I came out publicly. Basically around that area, I just came out. I had to be true to myself, really. I mean, I'm like this artsy literature person and everything, and then talking about activists, decolonize and stuff. And I felt like such a fake. Like I can't even decolonize myself. I was afraid to. I mean, granted, it was hard and everything, and I was still afraid at the time to come out in Billings, Montana as trans. But you know what? I just like decolonize. I got to be true to myself. And but yeah, even before that, it was like oh, I guess I could tell this quick illustration about my personal history. It's like so I had the incident when I was a little kid. I always had that dysphoria. But when I was about 16 and stuff, I became more artsy, more of a painter, writer, drawer and stuff, and more whatever, not afraid to be gender fluid or something like that. Anyways, and I was with a gal, and it was like kind of she thought it was cool and sexy, whatever. We were toxic for each other. Eventually, we broke up when we were about 22. I was about 21, but we were always back and forth. It was like, why are you with that girl? Well, she knew I was trans. That I accepted me, and but anyways, so I remember it was about 20. It was like right after that. I almost like left Montana, or at least went to Missoula, even just to like, I felt like my window of being trans, whatever, even hormones and stuff like that. Just like my ideal of whatever trans was back then was like slipping away and stuff. I was losing my twinkishness. I'll just say that. Anyways, yeah, and I was gonna go to like Santa Fe or anywhere just to, and that's kind of sad that I had to consider that I leave my own homeland where I would have once been a leader and stuff just to be myself. So, so I was really considering it hard, and I saw this one native like trans woman. She was about my age, about 22ish. And she came to the bar and she's like just like drop dead gorgeous. I didn't know she was trans until they mentioned it. The bartender was like, he's like, oh yeah, I had a date. Then I told him I was trans, and they just walked out on me right then. It's like, oh wow, missed out on a date with a beautiful woman. Here, have a drink on me. And I'm like, holy crap, this woman is trans. And I was like intimidated by her because I wanted the one her to wanting to be here, and I just kept going back to this dive bar, kind of waiting for her. And she finally comes in one day, and she's like dressed like really pretty red dress and everything, and she was just like visibly disturbed, like looking behind her shoulder, and she's like, "Well, what's the matter? What's the matter?" She's like, "I just wanted to look pretty today," and she's like, "It's like I didn't even do nothing." That she said. Barton's like, "I know you didn't do anything, but what happened?" And she's like, was just I wasn't even jaywalking or anything, but the police pulled me over or stopped on their lights and said I was. And then they were like, why would a man dress like this? And you're, accusing her of being a hooker and prostitute and all of this. And she's just like, I just wanted to look pretty. And, and the next thing you know, there's people came out the bar and calling me slurs and everything, and then followed her down the block. And then she had to basically run into that bar for that bartender, and she's like, don't let them, come in. He's like, okay, yeah, if they come in, I'll tell them, get out. And then that's the last thing I remember seeing her. I was like, she goes, I just wanted to look pretty. And she didn't think anyone was looking, but I was like, holy, just kind of off in the corner. She had a tear go down. She ran to the bathroom, and that's the last I ever saw of her, because I went to the bathroom as well, then came out and she was gone. And I was like, always wondered what happened to her. But at that time, I was like, yeah, I could not be that strong. I couldn't deal with that. So, but now I don't know. I guess it's more safer in ways and stuff. But either way, I don't know. I feel like I kind of have to be a trailblazer in a sense, be out here openly doing this because, we have all heard stories if we have trans friends that have, you know, but at the same time, I was like, um, yeah, I feel a lot safer than it was 20 years ago. That's for sure. So thank you, Gen Z Zoomers and stuff, or, or even the millennials to extend even. But yeah, and I guess that's what I have. I'm not even sure how long I've talked, but if anyone has any questions, I can fill in the gap. So, and you can ask me anything really. I'm one of those people that TMI and stuff. So,
Thank you so much, Adrian. Does anyone have any questions for Adrian?
How big is the Two-Spirit community?
Oh, yeah, it's basically, well, put it this way, it's, what to say, I went to a Two-Spirit camp hosted by the Two-Spirit Society, and there was like, it was an international one. It's around in Montana. I don't want to disclose the location. Flathead area. Anyways, it was like 130 people there, but that was like from this region up in Canada and everything. But yeah, I mean, I know some people that are LGBTQ and Native and stuff, and like one of my better friends, they're just like, I'm not Two-Spirit. I'm a lesbian, but I'm not, because I think because they're within my tribe, they didn't want to say, I'm Two-Spirit, but that's why it's an umbrella term. So, but basically the percentages are the same as, I would say, as any, it's like how many people within the white population percentage wise are LGBTQ. But it just kind of depends on how, if someone wants to define themselves as Two-Spirit, but most people do, I notice it. That's why it's an umbrella term.
Hi, I'm Charles. I'm from back east in New Jersey, so I have heard of Two-Spirit a little bit for about the past decade. I came in a little late, my apologies. Is Two-Spirit like specific to, I'm used to the word Native American or the indigenous peoples, is that
Oh,
true? Or can like people who are not indigenous be able to use that term? Because where I'm from New Jersey, we don't have many, it was traditionally the home of the Lenape, but there's very few people who are of any Native American heritage out east. So I'm curious.
yeah, that, like I said, or, I didn't realize you came late, but yeah, it comes from the term Ms. Donna Wood. I could spell it. It's a Ojibwe term anyway, that meant their translation, two spirits, incorporating, male and female spirits, or having a male bond with a female heart and soul, whatever, or vice versa. So, but yeah, that's just specific to that tribe. So, but at the same time, I thought it was a pretty good umbrella term to use, since my tribe basically is a hemane, which means uh, he is a woman. So we're very literal, like born a person or born a male with their heart and soul is, or hearted is another word that we use. And we also have one for hearted, womanly hearted man. So yeah, womanly hearted man. Uh basically our heart, it's not like we deny biology. It's like, but we're born like with a, you know, I kind of want to since this brought me made me think of something. Okay, they did this study of like, it's one might call it transmedicalism now. But I did think this study was interesting. They did this study of 30 people with gender dysphoria, and they had these brain, or the estrogen and testosterone, how it shot to their brain and everything. And within people with, the 19 of those people, it was like way different than it was with the regular populace, because their control group of 80 people, none of them had those people. But with the people with gender dysphoria, it was just like, it was like way different. They just had way more estrogen and way more testosterone if they were, trans male or whatever. Anyways, but basically back to two-spirit. It's basically an umbrella term of, I would say trans people, but it became a larger LGBTQ saying and stuff. But at the same time, two-spirit, at the same time, it means something like even deeper. That's why I wouldn't like claim it if you weren't within a tribe, because you look at the specific words. You wouldn't say, oh, wow, I'm a Ojibwe two-spirit. It's like, no, you're not Ojibwe. Or, I'm not Crow Bada, or I'm not, Cheyenne Hamane. I mean, that's why it was like, even to claim Hamane as I'm doing, it's a bit very, I don't know, you got to put yourself almost on a pedestal, really, of just like, okay, now you have to kind of speak for your tribe and stuff. You have to be a leader and stuff. And, some people don't want to do that, but it's not just like, oh yeah, I kind of feel, non-binary, gender fluid. I'm two-spirit. You probably just get accused of appropriation, whatever. But at the same time, it's like if you were cool with the Cheyenne people, you said it, or knew their ways and everything, and they considered you one of their, us. I think other tribes are less inclusive than us, but yeah.
Hi, Adrian. My name is Brian. Thank you so much for sharing with us both your own personal story and a little bit about two-spirit history. When you were talking about kind of how in the 80s and 90s, even within Indigenous communities, people were using two-spirit terminology as a slur. And obviously, hopefully things are moving in the opposite direction now. But I guess my question is a big one, which is like, how can we prevent the erasure of two-spirit identities, and when people are sort of regaining pride in Indigenous cultures, how can we make sure that two-spirit individuals are part of that story?
This reminded me of something that I usually add on, but it kind of ends on a sour note, really. It was like 2016 on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation tribe in Montana. So they had this 1-year-old, they found her in the dumpster dead in a duffel bag. And then like a month later, a 4-year-old was raped and strangled, who survived. And it was just like total drugs and meth. The community was devastated. They didn't know what to do. So what they did was they passed their response was to pass a bathroom bill law targeting transgender people. And that's what kind of really forced me to, like, in my head, is like, holy crap, how far colonization has come. Because you just imagine, like, I could just imagine Crazy Horse sitting in their tribal council, like, you're gonna blame the Winkte people for this? It's like, quit acting white, he would say. Basically, it was just like, that's how far colonization had come, where it was just like, oh yeah, that was they're gonna protect it's like they had nothing to do with this, but they're gonna, so now we thought, imagine just being this trans kid and you saw your community devastated by this horrible incidents of children being killed, raped, and all of a sudden the finger pointed at you, and you're like, what the, but, and I felt like, I wasn't out, like totally out. I was considering it. I don't know. I was trying to lose weight, something shallow like that before I came out trans. But at the same time, it was like that. I don't know. It just kind of made me more resolved that I had to like push back against that narrative, push back against, you know, that stigma where, you know, yeah, but less and less so. I mean, even like, even when I was like writing about it in an article and stuff, I said, yeah, I was telling the story of finds them and kills them. I had like 3 people say, why'd you write Bada in there? It's B-A-D. Why'd you write that? That's a slur. That's a bad, you know, I used to get called that when I was like, no, it's not a slur. This is like from, or, you know, Crow storytelling elders. That's the word they use. I mean, we just gotta take that word back and, you know, make it sacred, make it respected, you know. And so we, from that 2016 bathroom bill law, that's kind of where we are. It's not like natives were just like, you know, all of a sudden there was a big turn of events. It's like really ingrained, really incorporated in what our very, I want to say, conservatives, because you know, we did have that very ingrained, I don't know, colonization within us. That's one thing is like no one talks about is like we kind of decolonize, but how thoroughly successful colonization was in the first place, where, you know. And I guess there's this one, yeah, Polygon Allen. I told you to come back to her. She was the one who really started studying Two-Spirit people, but she was like, or, you know, dragging up all these stories they could find, that, you know, piecing together all of it while there were still elders alive who knew this stuff and everything. But she says, you know, to hate the, you know, or Two-Spirit people, they didn't say Two-Spirit, but I'm paraphrasing, is to really hate, you know, who part of you are as a Native American, because we were such an integral part of our communities, our spiritualities, our creation stories. So if you just like, oh, trans Two-Spirit people, you know, they're not, whatever, they're an abomination. It's like you're just basically renouncing your nativeness, I guess. You're really hating yourself, your ancestors, really, who just for, you know, thousands of years like accepted trans people as part of the communities and stuff. That was that. They, you know, kind of held to a leadership positions. Anyway, did I answer the question? I just kind of ramble off a lot. I know that. So
Hey, my name is Benny. Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate that. My question is, like, when it comes to like sweat lodge or pipe ceremony, I know a lot of traditional tribes, they like usually the men sweat by themselves and then women will sweat after, or they'll sweat on one side of the lodge or whatever. How would that look, you know, prior to colonization with two-spirited people?
let's see. As far as, you know, I don't know other people's or other tribes, whatever. But I did know we were always within the universally, we were always the link between tribes. Yeah, all the creation stories are like we were the link between both of them. So as far as sweats and everything, I assume they would probably be with both if they wanted. I mean, because that's pretty much, you know, they were always like socializing with the females and with the males. They would just go with both to war parties and be like dressing, busting hides, whatever, staying at the camp. So, but interesting story about my tribes, like for instance, is they had the scalp dance, which is kind of it seems like crude. For we became very militaristic ourselves, but that's how we gained so much power and stuff with it. Anyways, we'd come back, and if it was a great successful war party, it was like a big deal and everything, and everyone was all psyched up and everything. And then we would have a scalp dance, and then it would be like elders on the north end, and then married people on the south end, and then women on the west, and males on the east. And they would be the person in the middle leading this dance and everything. So that was like one of their most important ceremonies. And so, I mean, me, myself, yeah, I don't think I'll lead a scalp dance, but but at the same time, it's like in the historical context, we were very yeah, important like that. That's why I can't speak for like the Navajos and everything, the Dene. It's like, but I do remember that, like I said, it's like, wow, they were practical deities and stuff, and they were very important. And, you know, even down further south into Mexico's and Central Americas, it's like how they were just temples and everything, and they were the priestesses. Anyway,
So it's safe to say y'all are like a conduit of connection for like.
yeah, definitely the connection. That's part of the creation stories, is that's how we're explained a lot too, you know, with our creation stories is, you know, oh yeah, the connection. It's like I always can speak for my own tribe, but I suppose I know several stories, but yeah, like okay, so in the Cheyenne tribe, it's like, okay, you have the earth and whatever. It's not like levels or anything, but it's like the sky and the stars. And for like the earth and everything, the creators, the people who till soil and the bringers of life, that's the women. And then you had the sky, the males, and then they had the stars, which are almost like overlooking everything, connecting everything. That was the two-spirit people. So just like visually, like, I don't know, just things like that. And the Navajo, I guess I could tell that story too. It's like they had this like story where the women and men were kind of fighting at each other and whatever, and they busted apart. And then they went on one side of the river or other, and then they were like, they became really lonely. It was like way, way back. But the Nodlahay came to, and, you know, combined them, said we need to be one as a people. So, you know, just stuff like that. And each tribe has their own whatever variations of stories like that. So anything else?
Well, thank you, Adrian, and I hope we get to.
Yeah,
do something else
I
with
wish
you.
I was there with you guys.
Yeah, we wish you were too.
Yeah, I mean, I love Missoula.
Next time. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you have a good night.
Yes. Thank you for coming.